All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores. I know y'all have been seeing it, and of course, we got to talk about it here. Apparently, Brandon Aiyuk, in another episode of Brandon Aiyuk Does This week, he leaked a Commanders practice footage. And so now we got to talk about a lot of different things when it comes to him just simply releasing this practice footage. First of all, is this a sign that he may potentially get traded to the Washington Commanders? Y'all know me. We got to do an X's and O's analysis of that photo that he released. Like, who's on the field? Are we in a 4-3? Are we running a 3-4? I mean, 2 running back set there. We got to do a full dive into that. Also, is this considered tampering? And as well, we got to talk about, is he just using this as contract leverage for the 49ers? Does he actually want to come to the Commanders, or is he literally just using this as a, hey, I'm willing to go somewhere else if you don't pay me type of thing? But he's really just bluffing. He really just wants to stay with the 49ers all along. Who knows? We got to talk about that and how this potentially affects Jaden Daniels. Poor guy caught up in the middle of this, minding his own business. But we're going to dive into all that and more. But before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content, man. I really appreciate y'all for staying tuned. Again, I can't wait to where I'm just a little bit more free and I can start getting back to y'all with daily videos. I'm not promising that will start today or tomorrow or anything, but I really want to get back to that point, especially before we get to training camp starting once the rookies report July 19th. So make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I'm really cooking up on these film sessions. Again, I've already watched the film. I got the notes. I just got to find the time to sit down, record them, and do those for y'all. Really appreciate y'all, and I'm gonna keep y'all updated on everything going on with the Commanders. I'm working on another Rico report with a lot of different stats and things like that. So stay tuned for all of that, and without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so first of all, here's the clip that everybody is talking about. Now, granted, he did not post the actual clip, like a moving motion video version of the practice, but it is a picture from the All 22 exclusive practice footage that even guys like John Comm don't have access to, even Logan Paulson and those guys. This is clearly coming from the players. I'm assuming that he got this from Jaden Daniels because there's no other way to get it. But either way, you're seeing it on your screen. You know me. We're going to do an X's and O's dive into this. But my first thought, immediate thought was like, wait a minute. Do teams normally leak practices to opposing teams? I'm assuming he got this from Jaden Daniels some way, somehow. But also, of course, most people were thinking about the whole Brandon Aiyuk part of this, and like, as far as, does this mean we're potentially trading for him? We'll get there soon. But first, me being me, Mr. Film Analysis type of guy, all 22 lover. What's going on in this play that we're seeing in this clip? Before we even dive into the whole Brandon Aiyuk situation, we're going to get there. But first of all, what does this clip show us about the Washington Commanders? You know I'm going to overthink, but we're about to do a deep dive. Honestly, though, it's not really much to take from this play. Like, to keep it 1,000 with y'all, not a lot to take from this play. Because first of all, it looks like it's a lot of backups across the board. Offense, defense, really except for Jaden Daniels, looks like it's a lot of backups out there. So just from that part alone, first of all, we already know that they've been rotating players heavily, mixing it up like all the way when it comes to practice and things like that. On top of the fact that our defense will also just naturally have a heavy rotation of players based on like offensive matchups. Joe Wood Jr. already said, never ask me again about an 11 starters on defense. It's going to be like a heavy rotation of like 15, 16 guys that one guy may get more snaps this week, another guy may get more snaps the next week, just depending on what the matchup is and how we're feeling going about, you know, countering the opposing offense based on schematics and matchups and things like that. So we're naturally going to have a very heavily rotated defense anyway. But then on top of that, we've been running heavy rotations in practice, even mixing up some of the starters, the second stringers, the third stringers, just to kind of keep everybody on their toes and see what works. I mean, this is a new regime. We do not know exactly what works. We have some starters that we can assume are starters, but right now at this point, you got to remember, which takes me to my next point, this is an entirely new regime. So there technically are no starters yet. Honestly, they haven't even announced Jaden Daniels as a starter yet. Now, there's obvious guys like Terry McLaurin, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Samuel Cosme, and a few others that will obviously be starters. But for the most part, they've been going with the most random lineups for the majority of this offseason and practices just to see what we can do. Like, what works? Who works best with who? Who's the better? I mean, we don't necessarily know if for sure, like, Luke McCaffrey isn't one of our best 2 or 3 wide receivers. We don't know for sure if Olamide Zaccheaus, who's been balling out this offseason, if he isn't considered a top 4 receiver on this team right now, even above De'Ami Brown. Going into this season, you kind of feel like, yeah, if I had to put a depth chart together today, I would assume De'Ami Brown, maybe even some Jamison Crowder are above Olamide Zaccheaus. But right now, we're to the point in the offseason, especially before we get to training camp, where we're more so just trying things. Just let's throw these players out there together. See what happens. You just never know. That's the type of mentality we've had right now, and Olamide Zaccheaus is a good representation of that. He's a great example of how just try things and you never know. He's been making plays. He may be higher on the depth chart than most of us assume that he is. And then my second observation, with how Jaden Daniels was the starting quarterback all of mandatory minicamp, with him being the quarterback out there on this play with almost pretty much all backups across the board, offense and defense. Another thing to take away from this practice clip, which is why I don't know how much to actually take away from this practice clip, is that this was probably more than likely voluntary OTAs, which means that there isn't really much to take from this picture because it's backups, first of all, like we just talked about for the past few minutes, and it's an old practice where even like a spy couldn't take much from it. From this photo at least, or even if they were at that practice, they don't really know exactly what we're doing, especially like schematically. You can't really walk away with, oh, this is what the Commanders plan on doing against opposing defenses with their offense because of this photo. Like, it's not really much to take away from it because this is so old. First of all, again, backups, but also this is before Jaden Daniels was even like our starting quarterback. All mandatory minicamp. The 3 days of mandatory minicamp that we had just a few weeks ago before we went on this big break leading up to training camp, he was the starting quarterback, I believe, like every single snap. So this is before even then. So it's kind of like, how much stock can you really put into what's going on in this picture? But it's still weird that even Brandon Aiyuk has this photo, of course. Like, it's still weird. I personally don't think that it's necessarily a big deal that this photo got leaked, but it's very weird that Brandon Aiyuk has this. And I mean, can I get some access? How does Brandon Aiyuk have it and I don't have it? I'm assuming it's Jaden Daniels, which is how he has it. Maybe they're sitting together in a room. We're going to talk about that later. But again, just to further dive into the X's and O's and the observations I could take from this photo outside of the Brandon Aiyuk situation, just imagine if this photo just got uploaded from, who knows, just a mystery source. It wasn't Brandon Aiyuk. That's what I'm trying to look at this as right now. We'll get to Brandon Aiyuk later. So, again, even just to do a deep dive further into it, even though for the reasons I've already explained, we can't necessarily take too much away from the photo, even with it being backups schematically and all of that type of stuff, it does look like I'm seeing Ricky Strongberg at guard. I believe he's the right guard. So if he makes this roster, maybe he's assumed to be more of a backup guard than a backup center, maybe somewhat of like a Wes Schweitzer interior offensive lineman where it could be both. But I think right now he's more so of a guard than a center to this organization, which is what Rivera drafted him to be, a center. But at some point last season, he looks better at guard than center last year. I'm not going to lie. And even Rivera and those guys recognized it. So it seemed like they kind of transitioned them from guard to center. And it seems like Adam Peters, Cliff Kingsbury, and those guys, Dan Quinn, feel like maybe Ricky Strongberg is a better guard as well. So it makes sense. It seems like through 2 regimes, even though it's very limited, it's been a very limited amount of snaps and opportunities he's gotten so far since getting here, especially since he was hurt last year. And he wasn't even a starter before he got hurt. But so far through 2 regimes, even with the small slices of evidence we have, seems like Strongberg may be a little bit more guard than center. That's one big observation. Another one, I'm also noticing with the backups, the linebackers being Anthony Pittman, Bo Bauer, and rookie linebacker Jordan McGee. Is this even more proof that Jamin Davis is not considered to be an off-ball linebacker anymore? Just full-blown edge rusher? Because unless they're running 3 linebackers out there, even with the starters, because they're running 3 linebackers in the photo. But unless they're running 3 linebackers even with the starters, I doubt he would be considered a starting linebacker over Frankie Louvu or Bobby Wagner. Just say our two, when the starters are out there, we have 2 linebackers on the field. Jamin Davis wouldn't be out there, and then maybe they run 3 linebackers because they're not as good when it's the backups. Who knows? And if that's the case, though, like just say we do run 3 linebackers when we even have the starters out there like Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, then how do you have Mike Sanders still and all of those talented safeties somehow on the field at the same time? It's impossible. Somebody would have to be sitting. So I'm definitely thinking that Jamin Davis is not even considered an off-ball linebacker anymore. And we've already heard this from Commanders reporters that have been going to the practices, but now this looks like it could be further proof because, again, as talented as Mike Sanders still is, as deep as this safety group is, we're going to be playing an extra DB a lot. Like, we're going to have 5 DBs on the field, I'm assuming, more often than we have 3 linebackers on the field. So if your 2 starting linebackers in that most logical case, and in my opinion, and Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner out there with the starters, then you bring in the backups, and those are your 3 backup linebackers. Sounds like Jamin Davis to me is no longer an off-ball linebacker. He's a pure edge rusher, is what I'm taking away from this photo. Then another observation. It also looks like we have 2 running backs in this formation, so maybe that will be a prominent part of the offense. Maybe Cliff Kingsbury plans on using a 2 running back system pretty often, having potentially like an Austin Eckler and a Brian Robinson out there at the same time quite a bit. I mean, I know there's a whole, it's not a major debate, but at least I've had it internally with myself. Who is truly the starting running back? Because we brought over Austin Eckler as like the solid veteran that can come in and contribute immediately and be a good safety blanket for Jaden Daniels, but Brian Robinson is definitely more talented, at least athletically right now. I feel like he's stronger, and even as slow as Brian Robinson is, he may not even be as slow as Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler literally just comes with nuance, experience, and veteran leadership, but Brian Robinson, I think, may even be, he's definitely stronger. He may even be quicker. I'll probably give Austin Eckler the edge in the receiving game, but don't sleep on Brian Robinson's receiving ability as well. So it's kind of like who's the starting running back if only one's out there, which is more than likely what's going to happen most of the time anyway. It's usually going to be one running back out there. That's just how a typical offense runs their offense. But it looks like Cliff Kingsbury may get a little creative, and maybe both of those guys will be on the field at the same time more often than we think. But we have so many electric and versatile tight ends. I mean, between Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott, who do you not have on the field between those two at any given snap? So it's going to be really tough. It's a good problem to have. Same thing with the safety group. How do you play the DB group really outside of the outside corners? When I'm saying how talented this DB group is, I'm talking about the slot corners and the safeties. Who is sitting on the bench? Who's on the sideline at any given point? There's so much talent there. Same thing with this offense. We have so many weapons in the tight end, running back, and wide receiver room, especially the tight end room. It's just like, who doesn't play? So if you have 2 running backs out there, that means Zach Ertz or Ben Sinnott's not out there at the time. John Bates, who's arguably the best blocking tight end out there, I feel like he would make more sense because he's a great blocking tight end. You have 2 running backs out there. You feel like you're more than likely running the ball. So I wouldn't say it's an embarrassment of riches, but it's definitely a situation where it's a great problem to have. Who is on the field at any given moment? But I love the fact that we do potentially have plans of incorporating a 2 running back formation, play call, whatever. I'm really excited about that. It sounds like we're going to be creative is my main takeaway from that. Also, defensively, it looks like a 4-3 scheme is what I'm seeing, base defense, which is pretty interesting because even though Dan Quinn used a 4-3 defense in Seattle and in Atlanta, he started to use a lot of 3-4 defense elements once he got to Dallas. But this looks straight up like a 4-3 to me. So maybe he just used some of the 3-4 defense things in Dallas based on the players that he had at his disposal in order to get the most out of those guys. And maybe a 4-3 defense was better suited for the previous defenses that he coached against Seattle and the Falcons. So he must be looking at who we have on this current roster and then thinking to himself that a 4-3 defense is better suited for what we have on this roster versus the 3-4 elements that he felt like the Cowboys would have been better off with. And when you really look at it, it kind of actually looks like a 4-6 defense too. Now that would still have 3 linebackers on the field at the same time. So a lot of what I just said the past couple of minutes still holds true, but it's still interesting that it's either a 4-3, 4-6, whatever. I'm really excited. That shows that the Commanders may actually be thinking about getting really creative and actually actually going out there with a defense that's truly multiple. You know, a lot of defensive coaches always talk about they're going to be multiple. They always say they're going to do it in press conferences. They always pretend that they're multiple. But maybe we will actually go out there and have a 4-3 maybe base defense with a lot of 3-4 elements, maybe like the Cowboys. Maybe we may be a little bit more 4-3 than the Cowboys were. But it seems like we will get creative, not only on offense, you saw the 2 running back set, but then also on defense with this potentially looking like a 4-6, in my opinion, what I'm seeing right now. So again, the main takeaways I take from this is Stromberg's more of a guard. Looks like Jamin Davis, more evidence that he's a true linebacker. And then also our offensive and defensive coordinators are going to be far more creative. And I also want to remind you that I said Dan Quinn a lot, but remember, Joe Witt Jr. is the defensive coordinator. Just to remind you, he's already said that he's handed Joe Witt Jr. the keys. It will be Joe Witt Jr.'s defense, and he'll basically be calling the plays and everything. But either way, it looks like Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn feel like this team roster is probably best suited for a 4-3 scheme. I was thinking that over time, maybe Quinn was going to get more and more 3-4 defense-like as time went on. Again, going from Seattle to Atlanta to the Cowboys, over time, he started to incorporate more and more 3-4 elements into his defense. But it looks like he's going right back to step one. We're going right back to the 4-3 defense that I ran in Seattle and for the Falcons, and instead of what I did with my Cowboys. But also remember, I want to really emphasize this, and even though we just spent a whole like 15 minutes doing a deep dive into this photo on what it can mean X's and O's wise, I do want to remind y'all that this is one photo of one play with second and third stringers out there outside of Jayden Daniels. So it's really not safe to jump to any conclusions right now, but I just wanted to give y'all my breakdown of what I feel like is happening here. And maybe we did jump to some conclusions, but don't take anything extra serious from this photo. And now, because again, a lot of backups out there, and this is old footage because Jamin Davis hasn't been with the backups since voluntary OTAs. But now back to my very first thought. How does a wide receiver from an opposing NFL team have this footage? Please tell me. And so I immediately think, Jayden Daniels, why did you give him this? Why does he have access to this? And then even beyond that, why is Brandon Aiyuk even putting this picture out there? What is he even trying to say? What point is he trying to prove? I'm gonna dive deeper into that part later, but back to the Commander side of this, Mark Bullock brings up some great points in his Twitter back and forth that he had with JP Finley. He said, when he quote tweeted the picture that was released, he said, quote, "I'm willing to be completely wrong on this, but I kind of don't feel like this is as big of a deal as it's being made out to be. We know Daniels and Aiyuk are very close. I assume players will share a clip or two with friends all the time. Like, look at this sick throw I made, etc. and things like that. It's not like the whole world knows the Commanders playbook right now. All we're seeing here is second and third team offense in a formation versus a second and third team defense. Not a huge amount is being given away here." And then he also said, what info we can get from this pick, though: 2 running backs in the backfield, Rodriguez and undrafted free agent Michael Wiley. Second and third string offensive lineman is Brandon Coleman, Chris Paul, center unidentified, Ricky Stromberg at right guard, and Trent Scott at right tackle. Then the second, third string linebacker group is Bauer, Pittman, and McGee. We know that they're rotating guys in and out regularly, so it's really not any depth chart info. Even we really can't even take that from that, honestly. But then JP Finley replied with, "It's not about gaining info or insight. You're right, there's nothing there, but zero coaches, staffers, front office guys want that stuff posted. It's about trust and understanding that." And then Mark Bullock replied, and I agree with JP Finley there, "Sure, and I'm certain Adam Peters and Dan Quinn will have already have been on the phone to Jayden Daniels and had a calm conversation about it. I suspect they're probably already over it and past it, but nonetheless, this is drama. We can't ignore the fact that this is like just absolutely nothing. Maybe there's nothing to take from it, but this is not just nothing." And my dog Jamal at Let Maul Tell It brought up some good points as well on his Twitter account. He said players have posted practice clips thousands of times on socials. So I think that in itself, it's not a problem. I just have questions about the context. All I see floating around is a picture. Was Jayden with him when he took and posted that, or was it something else? If Jayden was, why was he okay with him doing that? All of that type of stuff. So much more to think about, like Aiyuk feeling the need to post that while under contract with San Francisco. At some point, the passive antics need to stop, in my opinion. You could have been watching tape with Jayden Daniels in silence perfectly fine if that was what you were doing, but hey, I don't know. And I agree, it's just a whole weird situation. I just don't understand how this got out there. I'm just hoping and assuming that he was with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was showing him some things, and then he just decided to take that picture. I'm just going to assume in good faith that he's a good enough best friend to Jaden Daniels that he asked Jaden Daniels before he posted that. I don't know. That's so weird. My boy Jamal also brought up something else as well. When he said one thing is for sure, if I was Jaden, I'm telling that man Aiyuk to keep me out of your mess from now on that you got going on with the 49ers. That's your man's though. And I completely agree, man. Jaden Daniels should not be the middleman and the little proxy between the Commanders, the Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers and everything he has going on with his contract talks. Jaden Daniels, yeah, he was there with Brandon Aiyuk for the pivot interview. That was cool and all. That's his best friend. But now when it's coming to things like this where it's affecting the Commanders team and it's now on Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and those guys' radar, you got to keep Jaden Daniels out of that. If anything, protect your best friend. And so then somebody else replied and said Aiyuk equals drama. And I can see that to an extent, but I also agree with my boy Mike Hall from the Burgundy Zone when he tweeted, "You've never heard anyone utter one bad thing about Aiyuk on or off the field, and he's doing what most star players do when they want the money. They think they deserve, so of course he's being labeled as a diva and a drama queen. That's just gonna happen." But then at the same time, I do kind of agree. Not all the way, but I agree with Al Galdi when he says the more Brandon Aiyuk acts like a drama queen, the more that I appreciate Terry McLaurin. I'm somewhere kind of in the middle. Like, I can see both sides. Brandon Aiyuk does have a lot going on, and it does make me appreciate Terry McLaurin. But at the same time, I don't want to label him as like a must-avoid player because of these antics. I don't think he's enough of a distraction to be detrimental to a team's chances of winning a Super Bowl. Like, if we want him because we feel like he's a great receiver, then this shouldn't stop you from doing that. I don't think that this is that bad at all. But it is still, like, I mean, you can definitely give him a little bit of a drama red flag here for whatever's going on right now, because I don't even understand why he's doing this. I don't understand what he's even gaining from this. We're going to talk about that later. But shouts out to my boy Mark Phillips on Twitter for pointing this out. It's starting to feel like the Commanders are Brandon Aiyuk's side chick, and I can kind of see that. But Mike Hall replied and said every player's side chick is Team X, and their main will always be money. What I take away from that, I agree, is that at the end of the day, most players want to play where they can get the most money. So maybe he doesn't care if it's the 49ers or the Commanders. He's just using the Commanders just simply only because Jaden Daniels is there. And if Jaden Daniels weren't there, we wouldn't even be in this mess right now. It's literally just, that's where my best friend just got drafted, so they're included into this. Because he even said he's interested in potentially playing for the Steelers if he can't play for the 49ers. But there's none of this drama is attached to the Steelers, because I'm assuming he doesn't necessarily have a best friend there, except for his doppelganger in head coach Mike Tomlin. That's the only real attachment and relationship that I feel like he has with the Steelers right now. But my point is, players want where they can go to get the most money first and foremost most of the time. It's literally that simple. Because how else were we getting free agents to sign here during the Dan Snyder era, the reign of terror that he had going on? They were taxing us big time. They can deal with not winning and not being used correctly, schematically, and all of that type of stuff as long as they're getting paid big money to do so. They will wipe their tears with dollar bills, dog. Basically an analogy, but maybe somebody's actually going out there doing it. I mean, that extra few mil that they could get playing for one team rather than another, no matter how bad that team paying them more money is, it can go a long way with helping their families down the road, like generational wealth type of stuff. So I think at the end of the day, man, yeah, it seems like he's treating us like his side chick, but I'm pretty sure that if we were willing to give him more money than the 49ers, then he actually potentially does really actually want to come here. And then my next point is, shouts out to JP Finley for pointing this out, that Fred Smoot said, talking about the Brandon Aiyuk situation, posting this picture. He said that Brandon Aiyuk needs to do what he needs to do for a contract, but leave Jaden Daniels out of it. I completely agree with that. Completely agree. I mean, if that's really your best friend, why would you put him in the middle of a situation like this to get him in trouble with his own team? I know Adam Peters and Dan Quinn were not happy seeing that photo going around. I know they're not happy. And then B. Mitch also said some things about the situation as well. He said, quote, Jaden is trying to make his own way right now, and this isn't helping, unquote. And I completely agree. Jaden Daniels is a rookie. It'd be different if he was an established veteran. He could get away with antics like, look at what Aaron Rodgers is getting away with with the Jets right now. But he hasn't done a single thing at the NFL level right now. So he's even on his own just trying to figure himself out, to make a name, to earn some type of positive reputation. And this is not helping him whatsoever. This is not necessarily damaging him to the point that people don't want to be around Jaden Daniels or anything like that. But you're not helping him at all as a best friend. And Kevin Sheehan also brings up a great point. He said maybe he's watching film with Jaden Daniels to help him. Fine. But he can't post this. This guy has talked too much and TikToked himself down in value. Really good receiver, but the handling of this issue with the 49ers is too public. It involves Commanders and Daniels way too much. I completely agree. There's no reason Jaden Daniels is caught up in this mess, getting in trouble, all of that type of stuff, man. This is absolutely ridiculous. And then, even though I am very skeptical, and I really do feel like he is kind of just using us as a way to show the 49ers, hey, man, I do have other options. If you don't want to pay me the money that I want, somebody else will, type of thing. And that he actually really wants to just stay in San Francisco and has no real intentions of getting traded here. That's in the back of my mind right now. I just can't let that feeling go. I just had that feeling in my stomach. And so even though I am skeptical of the whole situation, though, that's how I truly feel, and I feel like we are being used, I'm starting to kind of see the other side a little bit. Like my boy Rio Robinson, he said on Twitter, this guy really wants to play for us. And I can see that side a little bit as well, because Brandon Aiyuk really does not need to go this far to prove a point. If he is using us as contract leverage against the 49ers to get more money, he wouldn't need to do all of this to achieve it. He could just simply tell them, trade me to the Commanders. What does leaking our practice footage do for him to help him in that situation as far as getting more money? So I'm starting to think that maybe this is more of like a cry for help for the Commanders to basically come and get him. Maybe that's the other side of it. I'm still more on the skeptical side. I think we're being used, but I can also see that side as well. But then again, even when you look at it the other way, if he is only using us as leverage like I originally thought, like I still kind of feel, then how does this help him? I mean, either way, when you really sit down and think about it, no matter what the goal is, get traded or get a new contract with the 49ers, how does leaking another team's practice footage in a photo help his case at all? Because I'm not going to lie, if anything, this would only anger the Commanders, the team that people think that he wants to go to. You're only making them mad. I know Adam Peters and Dan Quinn saw this and didn't like this at all. So if he's trying to get us to trade for him, if that's really the goal, which I'm skeptical about, this move does not help that at all. If anything, it only makes it worse. So what is he really trying to do here? What is the actual goal? Who did this help? I mean, really the only people that benefited from this are that we have something to talk about July 7th, July 8th or something like that during the summer when we have nothing else to talk about football wise. Really, like the only winners right now are people like me, the content creators. But I really feel like Brandon Aiyuk didn't gain anything from this at all. I don't get it. If y'all know in the comment section, please let me know what Brandon Aiyuk could have potentially gained in any way, shape, or form with posting that leaked picture of the Commanders, except for trying to make everybody mad in the situation, the team that he's on and the team that people think he wants to go to, because his best friend Jaden Daniels is here and we're the ones always mixed up in all of his mess and things like that because we have Jaden Daniels on our team. And also in the comment section, let me know how you feel about this, because at J Daniels MVP, he posted a Twitter survey. He asked, do you believe Brandon Aiyuk sharing a photo of the Commanders practice film on his TikTok and having access to it, is it troubling? And 63.9% of people said yes. 36.1% said no, with 582 votes. So let me know how you would feel in the comment section. Do you feel like this is troubling? Do you feel like this is just a bunch of drama that shouldn't be happening? Or again, back to my previous question before we talked about the survey, do you feel like this helped Brandon Aiyuk in any way, shape, or form? Whether it helped him with his chances to get more money with the 49ers or helping his chances of potentially getting traded to another team? Do you feel like him literally leaking the Washington Commanders practice photo that I'm assuming he has access to through Jaden Daniels, do you feel like that helps his case in any way, shape, or form? But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please still farm that like button, still farm the subscription button, still farm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, man. I really appreciate y'all. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, once I'm not as busy, I'm really gonna work on trying to get back to the daily uploads. I mean, I can't even wait to get back to where I'm doing 2-3 videos a day. It's literally just about about finding the time to do it. It's not a lack of ideas or content. It's just sitting down and having the time. So, but I really appreciate y'all, man, big time. Make sure you leave a like before you leave this video. Do not leave this video without leaving a like. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't, because a lot more content is on the way. And once we get back to training camp, y'all know I'm gonna have y'all updated on every little thing that the Commanders are doing. Y'all already know my breakdowns, where I not only talk about the coaching staff, but when we get to the players, we do position group by position group breakdowns. We talk about everything that happened from the quarterbacks, what we saw. I show y'all the clips and the pictures from practice, and I give my analysis on it. We're gonna do it for the running backs, the tight ends, wide receivers, everybody on the entire team, even special teams. And we even do deep dives into the press conferences that are held by the players and coaches before practice and after practice and things like that. So make sure y'all stay tuned for that as well. I can't wait. And without further ado, man, I really appreciate y'all. Do not leave this video without leaving a like. Catch y'all later. I'm out.